Good morning. Greetings to everybody. I'm honored to be with you this morning representing an organization that has been life-changing. I was born into a very large family, the seventh of 8 children, that in a home that included my parents, my 5 brothers, my 2 sisters, my grandparents, and my great aunt. My father worked 3 jobs to keep food on the table and clothes on our backs. Mom was a stay-at-home mom. We were fortunate enough to grow up in the Rockaways, right near the beach, and my father used to call it the biggest playground in the world. It wasn't until I started school that I realized we were poor, wearing hand-me-down clothes that were either too small or too big, wearing socks and underwear without elastic. I felt very different from my classmates. I began working at the age of 14, using all of my money to buy clothes and shoes so I would be like all the other kids. And while still in high school, my mom, after many years of alcoholism, had a stroke. At that point, she did survive, she was left disabled, and since most of my siblings had married and moved out, it was up to me to do the housework, the laundry, groceries, meals, and show for my younger sister. During those years, my support system was usually my older siblings when they were around. My mom was distant, and my father was just too busy or too tired. I graduated high school. I attended college for 1 year, and before leaving school to start a job as a bank teller. Around that time, my dad became ill with meningitis, and he spent 14 months in the hospital. When he came out of the hospital, he had dementia. Some days he didn't even know my name. I worked in banking for 14 years, in which time many life changes took place. I married my first husband, who wound up being unfaithful and abusive, and at 25, I divorced him. At 28, I married my second husband, Frank. Over the next 8 years, I was fortunate enough to be a stay-at-home mom, raising 3 children. When my youngest was 2, my husband was fired from his job because of excessive drinking. This left me no choice but to enter the workforce and to support my family, so I got a job with the Board of Education as a para, or teacher's assistant, working with young adults disabled in wheelchairs and helping them to go to class. After 2 years of working at that job, my husband, who had gotten his job back, was diagnosed with cancer. He survived 2 years with chemo, and Frank died in 1999. So at the age of 42, I found myself a widow with 3 children and a mortgage that I couldn't afford. There was no life insurance, and working with the Board of Education became my lifeline. It gave me the opportunity to be home with my children after school and on holidays, plus I received benefits to help raise them. But that monthly mortgage payment was too much, and after a year, I sold our home and moved to a small bungalow a few miles away. It was one of the greatest things I did. I stayed with the Board of Ed for 12 years until I herniated 3 discs in my back, lifting the children in and out of wheelchairs. I had back surgery, was placed on disability. Again, I struggled to make ends meet. The following year, I enrolled in Kingsborough Community College Adult Education Program. I was in class at night, and I babysat for neighbors during the day. And once I completed the courses, I began searching for a job. I put together a resume and started applying to job postings that I found on Craigslist. It was recommended that I attend a job fair. I'd never been to one, and I was extremely nervous. The job fair was held at the Peninsula Hospital Adult Rehab Center. There were various businesses in attendance, from airlines to adult care facilities. I left my resume with those that I felt would have office work for me. During my stroll around the room was when I first noticed Dress for Success. Dress for Success had the longest line. The woman greeting everybody said, "Hi, I'm Kai Shabazz. How can I help you?" "I don't have a job for you, but let's see what we can do." I waited my turn, and so began my journey with Dress for Success. Kai invited me to come to the Dress for Success office in Jamaica Avenue the next day. We spoke at length and she informed me about the Breakfast Club. I agreed to attend and committed to 8 weeks. We scheduled my first suiting, and although I'd looked at suits at Macy's, I couldn't afford any. So this was, I'd never owned a suit, so this was very exciting. My first suit from Dress for Success was just like the one I liked at Macy's. It fit so well, and I thought I looked every bit the businesswoman. It completely boosted my confidence. I'd like to say it still fits, but time has added a few pounds. But that suit hangs in my closet to remind me to never give up hope. I continued to work with Dress for Success, working on my resume and my elevator pitch, attending mock interviews, and every now and then I would have a job interview, but no job offers. While not receiving a job offer sometimes left me feeling inadequate, I realized that getting an interview was a long shot. So I used each interview as something of a practice, and after each interview, I would critique myself to see how I could do better next time. Shortly after starting Dress for Success, my daughter, who was 15 at the time, became ill, and she contracted mononucleosis. It was a severe strain, and for the next 6 months, she was on bed rest, and she was homeschooled. That June, after she sat for her regents, she had surgery to remove a cyst that had grown on her spleen. She started to hemorrhage on the operating table, and they removed the spleen. I'd like to say that she's well, okay? 3 months after her surgery, I got a job at the Brooklyn Hospital in the medical records department as an office manager and director's assistant. As the first person hired for this position, I made it my own. A year after starting my job at the hospital, disaster struck again, and this time in the form of Hurricane Sandy. My home was destroyed, and I spent the next several months rebuilding my life and my home, which was left unlivable. And while in the midst of this rebuilding, I was laid off from my job the Friday before Christmas. After the 2014 New Year, I applied for unemployment benefits, and I contacted Dress for Success. Kai answered the phone. She said, "Come on in." She informed me that there was a new program called Going Places Network, and I signed up that day, started the program a few weeks later. The new program took the Breakfast Club to a whole new level. Attending the meetings with Dress for Success changed my life. My attitude of being unsure, unworthy, not good enough changed for one of, I can, and why not me? My confidence soared, and I knew that if I followed the recommendations given to me, I would succeed. During the next 6 months, I applied to jobs and went on interviews, but nothing stuck. When my last unemployment payment was deposited, I was worried. But the next day I had an interview, and I was offered a job. I started the following week. Now let me back up for a moment. Over the years of job searching, I compiled a list of things I would never do. I would never be a receptionist. I would never work for a temp agency. I would never work without benefits, and I certainly would never work for less than a certain amount of money. But the day I accepted the job, I said yes to a job as a receptionist for a temp agency with no benefits for less money than I had ever been paid in my life. My justification for the position was that it was across the street from my house, 200 feet away. At that moment, it was the best move for me after all the curveballs that life had thrown my way. Now, at the end of 2015, a new organization took over the managing of the program I was working for. It's a program which redeveloped neighborhoods affected by Hurricane Sandy, and I was fortunate enough to be accepted to the new team that would be moving forward with assisting the homeowners after the devastation. I am currently a liaison between the contractors and the homeowners, just as Dress for Success served as a liaison between my success and my skill set. I take pride in my work, and I'm grateful to be earning a living by doing something that feeds my spirit. I face each day courageously, hearing the voices of the Dress for Success staff over the years telling me, "You got this." I stand here today before you and say, I've got this. I've got this. I've got this because I have the confidence to have this, and I know any burden to success can be met by a positive attitude, flexibility, and the support of Dress for Success. I've learned that in every adversity lies a silver lining, and when my second husband passed away, I sold our home and bought a more affordable house. I raised my children in this home, and I still live there today. My children made lifelong friends of the neighborhood children, and in fact, my son married the girl next door. They now have a home in the neighborhood. They have 3 children, a dog, and a baby on the way. Would this have happened had my husband never passed away and we never moved? In all of life's seasons, there is a hopeful prospect. In every storm, there's a break in the clouds, and that is just what Dress for Success has been for me. A steady comfort companion, pushing me to be my best self in all times, giving me the support and the tools needed to succeed. Thank you.